Okay, so I have a 0946, so I guess we'll go ahead and kick this thing off. And so I'll start with good morning. I can tell by the amount of people here, the memo about the free donuts didn't get out there, didn't get proliferated as well, but hey, we'll work on that. And so I'm Colonel Team Phillips, and I have the honor and pleasure to be the commanding officer of Marine Corps Communication Electronics School, MCCES. Also have the honor to be joined by two of my subordinate commanders, Colonel Nate Lauterbach, commanding officer of Air Control Training Squadron, and Lieutenant Colonel Steve Murillo, commanding officer of Communication Training Battalion. And so what we're going to talk about is a continuation of MCCES's strategy, train to fight, fight to win. Last year, we talked about some things that we wanted to do. And so as I go through some of the things that we want to do, we'll talk more in depth about the successes we actually have. And then I'll get into the beyond operator level training, in which I'm going to throw out a concept, a thought process of getting beyond just the operator level of training. Then lastly, I'll hand the talking stick over to my COs, and they'll talk about the great things that they're doing right now. So overview, because not everyone knows about the greatness, the expanse of MCCES up in 29 Palms. So MCCES, we're one of 17 06 commanders under training command. We're out in 29 Palms, Mojave Desert, and there we have 2 of 3 commanders in 29 Palms. So as you can see there in yellow, 2 of the commanders here. So starting with on the far left, Comp Training Battalion, that's where all of our enlisted NCO and staff NCO, called advanced level training, is conducted. That battalion also has communications training centers across the globe directly supporting each of the MEFs, East Coast, West Coast, and Okinawa. So that battalion has a global presence. Then we go to Air Control Training Squadron. They also have a global presence, but they have a lot more occupational fields that they're training to. So you see there, they have Alpha Company, that's our ground electronics maintenance, 2800s. Charlie Company, air command and control operations and maintenance. And then an odd one for most, our EOD, Advanced Training Center, 2300s there. And so that global presence that I talked about, also we have some NCO level maintenance training at our communications training centers. That's on 29 Palms. Up in Monterey, nice place to visit, we have our Marine Corps Detachment Presidio of Monterey. So they support our crypto linguists, 2-part training to become a Marine Corps crypto linguist. First, you go to Monterey to get your language training that could go up to and beyond a year. After your year in Monterey training, then you go down to Goodfellow for your final MOS training. And so there in Monterey, we host also the MPS personnel that get the FAO and RAIL training. So all of our language courses are under MCD Palm. Lastly, on the far right, you'll see a couple, call it satellite schools, in which they are under different commanders, but their program of instruction still comes through MCCES. And so for those of you that weren't here last year, I'll quickly go through 2 of the problem sets that I presented, and actually we have some solutions to those problem sets. So the first problem set that I presented was our Marines awaiting training. We have a volume of Marines that come into MCCES 29 Palms for training. So much so that once they come on deck, sometimes they're not able to class up for, let's call it, up to a month. We've got a lot better with that. And so one of our problem sets was, what do we do with them while they're awaiting training, what we call MAT? And so the need that we asked for was an asynchronous computer-based training. Good part about that, green check mark, we now have a solution to support that. And that's where Tim Morello is going to talk more in depth about that awesomeness there. Second problem set throughout there was how do our systems, our physical equipment, the understanding that there at MCCES, when we receive equipment for Marines to train on, it's actually the operational system for the most part. Not many training systems that can help support thousands of students touching, breaking, and things of that nature of that equipment. In some communities, some occupational fields, we only have operational equipment. In others, under Colonel Lauterbach, we have actual trainers in some of his courses to support the volume of students going through that course. And so the yellow check mark, we have a thought process of a solution, but we don't have a fielded solution across the board. And so the conversations that we're working with our higher headquarters, as you see there, is, hey, we're talking about a training system that's a trainer or simulator together for those students to use to connect, disconnect, that can move through the maintenance cycle a lot faster versus the operational system that does not move through the maintenance cycle at the speed necessary. And so this concept of beyond operator level training, I think the proponents of you are very knowledgeable of this operator level training. So let's look outside of the communications community. So Joint Strike Fighter, we all know and love that 5th generation capability, but the awesome picture there, you see there's actually a simulator. Pilots, they have a simulated cockpit, they have to do lots of hours in that simulator. And that simulator shows them so many different levels of what they could and will see in the cockpit, the systems that they're engaging with and things of that nature. Amazing system there. That's for our pilots. In the ground realm, we have our ACV, the Amphibious Combat Vehicle. That's the new vehicle, but you see, they're fielding that vehicle with a simulator. So now the driver operator gets hours driving that vehicle in a simulator before getting in the actual vehicle. Then we see here, hey, the Gator radar, the multiple role radar, the TPS-80. We all know and love it. The CCP hates it and is extremely afraid of it. Under Colonel Lauterbach, he has what they call a part task trainer. They have fielded MCCES with a capability for those Marines to train on a simulator, to train on a non-operational system before they work on the operational system. So we're getting close to things that we need across MCCES. Lastly, you see the persistent cyber training environment. U.S. Cybercom for our defensive and offensive workforce. They have a range that U.S. Cybercom is paying for to support those defensive and offensive operators to continue to do rehearsal, individual mission rehearsal, and sometimes even team level rehearsal. That's all at the operator level training, and we do that extremely well. And the commander's going to talk about some of the awesome things they're doing. But an issue that I'm noticing is, what about for folks that don't touch the equipment for the most part? I know as an officer, my TO weapon system is not actually the keyboard and working the system. My TO weapon system is Microsoft Office. That's what I do very well. And so how do I show when I'm leading Marines? So as far as leaders and managers training, some of you might remember the movie, or the book that is, Ender's Game. And so Ender, and they turn it into a movie. So others might remember the movie itself. But Ender actually was in a simulator controlling different, let's call it division, brigade level formations, and kept going through the simulator to understand what he did wrong, what he did right, and then take the things he did right, put it back in the simulator, and go to the next level, the next phase. What do we do that within our level of training? Because once we go to an exercise, while you have the live virtual constructive environment, that's you, for the most part, we don't get to train there. There's other folks that get to train, not those of us in the comm electronics world, in the realm. So we don't have an environment in which, call it, you put a young lieutenant with a headset and have that individual, as the network is coming up, scenario one, possibly, hey, the operations officer tells them, hey, we have something going on here, what's your plan? That lieutenant has to think about his or her resources and then talk about how they're gonna plan to move a node, to increase system resources and things of that nature. Shift to another scenario. Lieutenant realizes, wow, the sergeant says, we have an intrusion on the network. What do you do? I don't know. Call McCall. I don't know. We don't have those scenarios for those leaders and those managers beyond actually getting on the keyboard and getting email working, getting the website working. That's the level of training that we need that's beyond the operator level training. That's my thought process concept that we need to get to, and that's something we'll work on. So at this point, I'll hand it over to Colonel Lauterbach.
Morning, everyone. Colonel Nate Lauterbach here, commanding Air Control Training Squadron. Interesting unit out in 29 Palms. There's almost nothing like it in the Marine Corps because it's such a huge diversity of things that we train, whether it's ground electronics maintenance in Company A, and frankly, they're moving into some new electromechanical repair type things, dealing with robotics and automated type systems. POI changes are mostly handling the situation over there. Company C is in a state of radical change, dealing with the proliferation of, the changes in the character of war and the proliferation of unmanned systems is causing us to take a new look at air defense. And it's causing pretty much along the whole .mil PF spectrum, like changes to the formation. I'll be getting into those. And then lastly is the EOD Advanced Training Center. Going back into what Company C is going through right now, so I'll put it in three different categories. First one is MAOC. It's a multifunction air operations center. Previously, in the past, we had basically two principal Air C2 agencies that were in charge of doing tactical aviation command and control type things. One was the Direct Air Support Center, which serviced ground troops with medevac requests, close air support requests, coordinating the airspace for that Marine division that was in contact with the enemy. And then the other one is the TAOC, which is more involved in air surveillance, air defense, providing a bubble of air superiority so that GCE and that air wing can get at it and start attacking the enemy. We are merging those functionalities into a single agency. And we just kicked off, for both the officer and the enlisted here just a couple weeks ago, the merged training syllabus for both of them. So we will not be training DASC officers and TAOC officers anymore. We are training aviation command and control officers. Same thing with the enlisted specialties as well. So that's a win. That's already happened. We're in execution. The POI is out there. We're executing it. And in terms of the MOS manual changes, those are coming. It's a fact, and frankly, the decision memo supporting that, all those efforts, was just signed this past week by CDNI, the Deputy Commandant for CDNI. Second big change is to air defense. So I'm not talking like the TAOC, Air C2 world, but I'm talking about the guys who actually sling missiles into the sky and knock things out of the sky. All right. With that, in the past, we had a single low-altitude air defense training section. About on paper, 2 officers and 13 Marines to train that specialty. There's been there's projected to be, with all the force design changes, MLRs coming online, the standing up of 1st Lab Battalion out in Hawaii and all the batteries inside of it, a 600% increase in the number of boat spaces for those Marines out there. the capacity just doesn't exist. So what we're doing here this coming April is we're breaking out the LAD training section and we're building it into a separate battery in the formation. So that slide that was briefed up here is going to be wrong here pretty soon, okay? Company A, Company C, and we're talking a separate LAD battery as well. We have a major who's going to be coming in to command that formation, and then first sergeant also coming in. So in a time when most Marine Corps units are shrinking, Air Control Training Squadron is growing by about 10% in terms of the number of people that it has. And that's to fix the today problem of like, I don't have enough Stinger slingers in the inventory. We got new technology coming online as well with the MATA system, which contains an electronic warfare suite. It has a 30 millimeter cannon, it has an embedded radar, and it has a surface air missile system on board, each system containing aboard 2 JLTVs. We're starting to transition to that thing, to that principal weapon system this coming year. And additionally, with all that new technology, we're migrating one of the other MOSs we used to have called, it was 5979 was the MOS. It's Air Defense Systems Technician. That's going to be the technician for them, for that specialty. So 5979s are being introduced into LAD formations now and MLR formations, where they really haven't, the 5900 community, the MAX maintenance, Marine Air Command and Control System maintenance committee really hasn't had a footprint there in a long time. So they're going back into it, and they're going to be a part of that separate battery as well. So that's a huge change. And then lastly, we're ripping out air defense into a separate battery to build a Marine Air Defense training battery. We are replacing that with a new system, with a new training section as well, interface control training section. One of the changes to come out of force design was the Marine Corps is the only service that hasn't had the ability, or we've had the ability, but we haven't had formalized training to make joint interface control officers and people who are smart on Link 16. So we are starting to get into that business now. We're building the service's first and only interface training center to train tactical data links, both Link 11 and Link 16, composite tracking network, any kinds of JREAP, any of those things where you actually have to knit together those kill webs. So I can take a sensor, I can take a command and control agency, and a shooter or an effector, and we can actually start constructing those data links. In the past, we've been able to do it basically off of our own backs because we have some enterprise and Marines who go and undergo the joint training. We're going to host that training now. So we're building that out as well. It was the #1 priority by the training, the Commanding General Training Education Command to get this thing funded. It's cost around about $700,000 worth of equipment to get this off the ground. And we're going to be hosting our first warrant officer course for the 7216 course, like Link 16, this coming summer. So we'll have the first 3 of those, and those first 3 officers will be heading out to each Marine division, which is interesting. Divisions don't speak Link 16. Well, they will be now. Okay, it's going to be a different type of formation. And then after that, we're going to have our own 7216 instructors organic to us. Right now, we're just bootstrapping it based off of our own officers and enlisted. So that's basically the story about all the changes inside of Air Control Training Squadron. We've had a lot of change going on between whether it's breaking out air defense, whether it's building out interface control, and then merger of these command and control agencies. It's really like pretty much every single part of Company C, which is the core of the formation, is affected by this. And it's bringing us into the future in terms of that. One of the things I will say is like the way force design first kicked off, it was a fleet-centered thing. A lot of experimentation in the fleet, a lot of units tasked with going out and figuring out what the future needs to look like, whether it's in the MLRs, whether it's air command and control companies inside of Control Group 38 out of Miramar. Now we're taking those lessons learned and we're finally migrating them into the supporting establishment, and Air Control Training Squadron is on the cutting edge of that. That's really the good news story for us. Over to you.
All right, thanks. So, good morning, Steve Morello, CO of Com Training Battalion. Appreciate you joining us here this morning. So I'll talk about a couple themes going on at CTB. First, my focus is creating operationally relevant communicators. And what I mean by that is our products, roughly 10,000 Marines going out to the Fleet Marine Forces that are either trained in Camp Pendleton or trained at our regional CTCs, can go back to their unit or arrive at their first duty station and immediately add value. So when we talk about training to fight and fighting to win, that is our #1 focus. In order to do that, there's a couple key things that we've implemented into our periods of instruction. The first is the Expeditionary Communicators course. And so this course is designed to teach junior NCOs, sergeants up to staff sergeants, how to be a multidisciplinary communicator. And what I mean by multidisciplinary is the previous model in the Marine Corps was you need a transmissions Marine, you need a data networker, and you need systems Marines to be able to enable command and control. Right? My background primarily in SOF for 15 years. The model there is, hey, we don't have the boat spaces to be able to send 30 Marines to get comm up, right? We're going to send one or two that are going to do the whole thing, right? From the transmissions to the IP networking to the data systems to the help desk. And so ECC is a version of was derived from the SOF methodology of creating a multidisciplinary communicator for the conventional forces. So when we take a look at the MLGs and this disaggregated model of employment throughout the first island chain, these ECC communicators that are supporting the MLRs, that are supporting reconnaissance battalions, that are supporting division or the MAOC concepts are all multidisciplinary trained. So they get transmissions, they get the data systems, and they get the networking to be able to go out in the EABO model, in this disaggregated model, and immediately provide comm. So changing the paradigm of how the Marine Corps employs our communicators. And that was really CTB's bid for success to support force design. Another thing that we've implemented recently is classified information briefs, periods of instruction. And the value for this is if you talk about other occupational fields, like Colonel Lauterbach is a flyer, so if you asked him about, surface to air weapon systems, he would be able to tell you from a Huey platform, like what his vulnerabilities are. If you talk to an infantryman in Helmand Province in Afghanistan, he could probably tell you maximum effective range of an AK-47, a PKM, an RPG-7, things of that nature. If you talk to a communicator and you ask them, hey, what's a spoon rest or a golden walk, they think you're probably talking about a Chinese restaurant, not a PRC capability. And so we're changing that. Right? My thought process is communicators, C2 professionals, need to understand an adversary threat system to be able to plan our C2 effectively. So we're taking steps to integrate secret, no foreign to the most part, but up to TSSCI level briefs in our more advanced POIs to be able to give our communicators the threat pictures so they can accurately inform their commanders to enable command and control. So I think that's a major win. Another aspect of providing operationally relevant communicators is the integration of the Marine Corps TAC grid, so the tactical grid that's currently being employed throughout all of the MEFs. And so the transport strategy that's due to be signed here soon, if it isn't already signed, is a key aspect of the tactical grid, and we've already included that in the POI. Again, changing the paradigm of how the FMF is providing tactical communications. It's already included. Android Tactical Assault Kit. So my background, I've been talking about ATAC for going up on a decade now, and its value at the tactical level as a command and control, understanding PLI at the tactical level. And so not waiting for it to be included and get approved through POIs going up through training command and TECOM, but the value that it's being employed in the FMF, units are using it, our data systems administrators need to understand it, and that's an effort that we're taking on. Modernizing instructional delivery. I'll tell you, coming from a joint world and coming back to the Marine Corps at MCCES, it was shocking to learn that we didn't have a virtual learning environment for our students, meaning that the students could only access our material when they were in the classroom. So thanks to our partners at Cyber Ranges, we've developed VLE, which is a virtual learning environment, which gives our students access to course material regardless of where they're at. So if they don't understand a networking concept, how DNS works, right, they can access that information after hours in their barracks room while they're at Starbucks on the weekends. That capability previously not available. We're going to go live with that in the next couple months. So as Colonel Phillips mentioned, a game changer as far as delivering instruction to our students, and potentially throughout the FMF as well. Imagine if you're a recruiter on recruiting duty, communications background, you're coming back to the FMF. There's no skill-based assessment to make sure that you understand that. There's no online virtual platform sponsored by the Marine Corps that allows you to make sure you're up to speed on the latest things going on. And this VLE environment gives those Marines that access. We're also implementing VR headsets for our initial radio operators. So if you can imagine a Marine like hunched over, pick your Harris radio, punching the buttons on it, they break a lot of equipment. Again, they can only access that equipment when they're in the classroom. These VR headsets give them the ability to put on VR goggles and go through the steps to be able to program these radio systems without actually breaking our equipment. Again, a win, and just another opportunity that taking the instructor out of directly out of the transition of learning and giving our students the ability to facilitate and have agency in their own learning. The CTC training opportunities. So this is a unique opportunity that we have to have touch points with the MEF. So as Colonel Phillips mentioned, we have regional training centers embedded in each MEF, really in direct support of the MEFs. And these CTCs are doing great things. And I want to highlight kind of two major accomplishments or two major accomplishments, primarily out of CTC2, out of Camp Lejeune. So the Tactical Grid Network Operators course was initially a pilot course developed in support of 2MEF and Colonel Belt, the G6, to train the Marines on the tactical grid. And so it's a week to 10 days long. These Marines come in, get spun up on what's going on in the tactical grid, and then go back to that FMF unit because they weren't receiving that instruction at the schoolhouse. So obviously that's changed, but that's a model for success and partnership from our regional training centers partnered with their direct support G6s to fill a need in the FMF. Another recent development was a commercial SATCOM course. So we don't have a lot of commercial SATCOM up at the schoolhouse. We primarily teach POR systems. But obviously in the fleet, there's Chimetas, there's Star Shields, there's Starlinks, all kinds of commercial SATCOM courses. So again, an initiative out of 2MLG and 2MEF with our CTC, with our partners at Viasat, John McCain and Jim Robinson, being able to provide us the airtime and the equipment to train our Marines on what's actually being fielded in the FMF. So another win there. And I'll just close by offering online training opportunities. I think a significant win for myself. I was out of the Fleet Marine Force for a significant period of time, and coming back, getting spun up on what is going on in the FMF from a communications, from an occupational field perspective. We offer COM 201, which is basically a regraining to any of those 0602s or C2 professionals coming back to the FMF or supporting establishment. That's an online-only asynchronous learning opportunity where they can get spun up on the latest POR systems from CD&I, what's going on the tactical grid across the MEFs, and just regrain before they come back to the fleet. So appreciate your time. I'll close with that and open the floor to questions or comments.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. And so that's the presentation that we have for you. We left some time on the clock in case you have any questions, comments, concerns, and things of that nature. So open the floor for questions.
Hi, I have a question for you. Well, first of all, I want to tell you I've been talking about what you have talked about in the presentation ever since 1991, so it's crazy. And also, most of the people that I appreciate, my employees and my husband, went to COMELEC school, so thank you for that. So because I have a small business at Camp Pendleton, I often think about 29 Palms. And I was wondering, with all of this stuff, is there anything in your acquisition forecast to support those things coming up that we could help with? I have a Link 16 SME. And so what are the things that small business can do to help you in the coming years? And then also, I also wanted to ask if you would ever be willing to do a presentation like this for either AFCEA Camp Pendleton, for which I'm the president, or NDIA San Diego, where I'm on the board, because we would love to hear what you're asking for and come up with solutions.
Sure. So I'll try to answer those in backwards order.
Okay.
And so as far as supporting AFCEA and Camp Pendleton and any presentations, things of that nature, yes, happily. Not an issue. Looking forward to that. To getting the narrative out about what MCCES does and what it can do. So we look forward to any of those opportunities. As far as accessing, call it small business, trying to get into acquisitions and support initiatives that MCCES has. And so that's something that we learned and are still learning from last year as far as where's the belly button for, I'm going to call it contracts, RFPs, things of that nature to get into our initiatives. And so that's something that we're trying to build. I'm looking to put that together before I hand over the stick here in July to say that through working through Training Command and TECOM, Training Education Command, these are the things that we're trying to do, and this is where you can go to get access to ideas or contracts that we're putting out there for proposal.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good morning, gentlemen. Sergeant Harvey, Expeditionary Strike Group 3.
Brah.
I just wanted to ask, with the Commandant's planning guidance shifting us back to our naval roots and the focus on the amphibious ready group, how heavily is MCCES incorporating amphibious communications in the curriculum for the Marine Corps' future MU deployers?
Awesome. So what I'll do is, because both of them actually have a piece individually, so Nate, you're going to start and Steve finish.
Yeah, the way it's sort of embedded in our curriculum too, particularly in the Air C2 side of things. We, for the MAOC course, it does teach basically how to support amphibious ready groups in transit. And as a matter of course, like for quite a while now, we've been, the various Marine Air Control groups have been providing Marines both to support the embarked Marine Expeditionary Units, and oftentimes they'll work with attack runs afloat, or we're in the process of actually, the Marine Corps writ large is in the process of shifting the Marine aviator who's normally sent over to attack runs and attack groups to an Air C2 officer as well. So that's going to happen. If it has not happened already, it's going to be imminent. So it's already embedded in us. It never really left our DNA, and in many ways we've been teaching it. But it's good to see that the emphasis going back to more of our amphibious roots, and we're making use of some of that, basically heading back to the gym and working those old muscle groups we haven't worked in a while.
Yeah, and I'd say Comm Training Battalion, it's integrated in the majority of our advanced level POIs, so Comms Chiefs course, Transmission Chiefs course, our Basic Officer course, our Advanced Officer courses, all talk about fleet support. We talk about fleet comms, integration at multiple levels. We go down to Camp Pendleton and down to the naval base, get on amphib ships, right? We're walking through, the lieutenants are getting lost on L-class ships, trying to figure out how to read the bulkhead and figure out where they are. So it's in the POI. It continues to be emphasized, I would say, from a leadership level.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Let me ask you a question. What do you think we can do better?
I've sponsored BCOCs, perform that tour for them. The focus I would like to see is more capable in the junior enlisted side of, we have a bunch of Lance Corporals who just hit the fleet and they're expecting all of this field side work or field side communications, and then they jump into a completely new world, completely alien to them. And yes, they're intelligent and yes, they're spun up on communications, but throwing them into this world, it kind of has them lost to the wind. So shifting the focus a little bit more into incorporating it in the junior enlisted curriculum, I think would greatly benefit the fleet for the future of the MUs that are happening.
Okay, yeah, I'll take that on. I appreciate that.
Sure.
And I'll add on to that. Awesome. So I love how we do our basic building blocks training across ACTS and CTB. And so when I think of the basic building blocks training, whether the box, networking box is gray, blue, or green, depending on the vendor, it's still routing and switching, It's still cables and wires. We just need to have our young motivators, don't be afraid of the color of the box and what vendor and the command language as it's coming out. It's still, go back to your basic training, because whenever we meet an adversary, we will always snap back to the last thing we were trained to do. And the training that we have, the last thing is, it's still routing, it's still switching, it's still X amount of pin cabling and wiring. Thank you. Any other questions?
Good morning, sir. Gedra
Morning.
Fuentes. I'm writing on the conference for USNI. You mentioned trying to develop and build this operational learning environment, training environment, and the difficulty in trying to kind of create this vision. What are some of the obstacles that's sort of slowing down that process? And is there anything that you've seen so far at this conference and out on the horizon where you can get some of this, modern vision for training sooner to the schools?
Sure. So let's say the obstacles that I realized, let's call it last year and this year, were more of I did not know what was occurring at my higher headquarters level because possibly I didn't know about the meeting that was going on, or I saw a presentation on some venue and I just didn't understand what those words meant. And so we've incorporated into MCCES's Commanders Conference twice a year. We have Training Education Command action officers talking about their three-pronged projects, Tripoli, Triumph, and Trident. And now we've gone through 2 iterations of that. At first, it was just words. Now we're understanding, okay, how do I get into the funding or acquisitions for Project Trident? Where does the VR headset fit into any of those things? So those obstacles was more of understanding the business processes of our service and learning how to interject into those. Then the best part about coming to a conference of this nature, as I like to call it, it's a big family reunion. And so I get to see my fellow colonels and say, hey, you're working that project, or, fellow what have you, and we all realize that, hey, we're working some of the same things. Let's work together, and I don't have to use my operating maintenance funds. Maybe you can use their funds to fund the thing that we're doing, and that's when we all win. And so I think that's how we're getting over some of those hurdles and building blocks. Gentlemen, anything?
Yeah, I'll definitely speak on that. Marine Corps isn't the size it used to be, and like I said, Air Control Training Squadron is going by about 30 boat spaces, about 10%. Doing that in a shrinking Marine Corps is a challenging thing to do. What I'll say on that is achieving that could not have been done through training command alone. It took a lot of building alliances with the battalion commanders in the fleet so they could register the need, because we have a warfighter-centric combat development system. So if they express the need, there's a better chance it'll happen. Additionally, one of the innovations we had, this is kind of getting down in the weeds a little bit, but with the nature of the training going on within air defense. Previously, the way the training was done was basically 4 classes a year, 64 Marines, giant lecture hall method, PowerPoints up on the screen, then we'll demonstrate it once in the field and then go do it. We've altered that now. Now it's shifted toward more classes, smaller classes, more often with a better student to instructor ratio, built around a section. A section is an actual tactical unit. That's the way we're training them here, and the way they employ themselves out in the fleet. To accomplish that, we had to get instructors from the fleet in order to both increase the quality of the training as well as increase the sheer number of Marines we're sending out to the fleet. The way to do that, here's the problem though. The problem is if I'm only convening 4 classes a year of relatively large classes, the ability of the Marine Corps to actually fill those classes up with the recruits showing up was actually really challenging. We weren't even filling out the classes. So going to fewer or more classes, but smaller classes more often, that was the thing we had to do. The reason why it was a challenge is I lacked the manpower. So I went out to the fleet and I said, battalion commanders, give me around 15 Marines. And if you do that, I will fill out your boat spaces. So you will assume risk now, we'll transfer, I'll take the benefit, and in the end, you will be in a better place, and then ultimately we're all better off because they will have better trained Marines who can then come back to the schoolhouse. It's a virtuous cycle. The problem is getting someone to buy off on that risk. And so it took a lot of, I wouldn't say cajoling, but a lot of like, listen guys, this is the problem we have. You will never have a filled out battalion because I can't train your people because I can't convene the number of people into the classes unless you support me with this. We got them to yes on that, and then additionally we had to work sponsorship at the deputy commandant level, DCA, to register the need of 3-star to 3-star to 3-star to make that happen. So it's not, if you're just working through training command and just registering needs through there, it'll never happen because everyone views things as a very much a zero-sum game. But if you're able to talk to your sponsors and headquarters Marine Corps and the Army of Northern Virginia, if you're able to talk to the battalion commanders, generate alignment, you can accomplish great things. And I'm convinced, 100% convinced, that this is exactly what the Marine Corps needs, because you look at the changing character of warfare, you look at the proliferation of unmanned systems. The only way to defeat that is provide a bubble of air defense, and we just have to do it. If we're not going to do it, we're going to have dead Marines out there. It's that simple. So I'm convinced that everything we're doing is going to save Marine lives in the future in battles we haven't even thought about yet. Learning how to play that varsity level, like how does Quantico look at the problem? How does the Pentagon look at the problem? How does the fleet look at the problem? If you can figure out ways of talking to them in a way where it's benefiting all of us, you're going to win.
Yeah, and I think from the comm training battalion perspective, this venue is incredibly useful to reduce our blind spots. For me, coming out of the Joint SOF environment, super familiar with MAN-A radios, persistent systems. I was unaware that those radios are fielded in the FMF. I know we don't teach that in any of the 06 level courses, right? So having that awareness that EOD companies now have MAN-A radios, or regardless of the manufacturer, right? And now we can start incorporating that training so Marines in the fleet can get that training at the CTCs or at the schoolhouse is a great example. So I see the industry partnerships as critical to our success. I mentioned the commercial SATCOM course that's going to take hold at all the CTCs. I couldn't do that without industry partnerships. I couldn't do that without Viasat and others that are supporting that course through their airtime that I'm not paying for because they believe in training our Marines. And VLE and cyber ranges, another key opportunity for us to partner with industry partners and improve the product that we're pushing to the FMF.
So I'll add another hurdle that we have overcome in the past year or two. And it's under the heading of, it's not just about the money, it's all about the money. So one of the things I had to learn about as far as commanders' authorities is fiscal. So my predecessor did a phenomenal job of getting us to implement wireless on our campus. If we would have went through the regular way of doing things, sending things through our regional contracting office, they have a lot on their plate and they have a very low amount of people capable of writing those contracts. So they're behind. What they were able to do, what our team was able to do, is find other means in which working through other vendors in which you pay a higher overhead tax to get it sooner. So instead of waiting for a contract to be written, bid, and things of that nature that can take a year, 18 months, in 2 to 3 weeks, thought process, send it over to this vendor. The vendor is able to, in 2 to 3 weeks, write the contract. We can put the money to it right now, and now we have that capability, cyber range, VR headsets, wireless. We have all these capabilities now versus 18 months in the future, and we're still just trying to figure out, okay, we're still operating under 1 year money, O&M funds, that we just can't spend. That's another hurdle that we jumped over, and now hey, we're using that a lot, a lot. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.